Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Buff Breakdown. This is day 2 of the anniversary buff rotation, and today we have buffs to Bradamante, a skill buff, and William Tell, also a skill buff, for the 5-star Lancer and 3-star Archer respectively. First of all, I'm happy for the recipients. Will was already pretty okay, but you know what, a buff will do him good as well, and Bradamante for sure was one of the most in need of a buff of all SSRs in my opinion, arguably the weakest in the game. So yeah, let's start tackling them. We're going to talk about the Bradamante buff first because it's a bit easier to understand. So it's a buff to her 3rd skill. Now what the skill used to be is on a 5-turn cooldown you had a targeted 20% battery and also a debuff cleanse, and that's it. That was it. For a 5-turn cooldown on an SSR, this was weak. Just weak. Didn't really do enough, honestly. But now, same 5-turn cooldown, but first of all, the battery has been increased from 20 to 30%. Again, it's targeted. And then we have more new stuff. The cleanse is still the same, by the way, for the target. But she herself, no matter who you target, she gets 30% anti-earth attribute damage for 3 turns. And then also she herself gets 30% MP gain for 3 turns. Now those will not go on the target. These 2 new effects are for herself only, no matter who you target. Now first of all, the power mod, I like it. Very cool. It's not the most original one, of course, but earth attribute, again, fairly common for both servants and normal enemies. The only one that's more common is man attribute, but earth is also very common. So that's gonna hopefully increase your damage up a little bit for both DPSing and farming, depending on the node. So that's not bad. And then the MP gain is arguably the bigger one here, because her refund was terrible, needless to say. Like, to show you. So yeah, she used to need a full-on maxed K-scope with double Scotty to loop, which not great, and her numbers obviously weren't that good either. And then they released Bradamante, who just kind of dumps on her with much better refund. Now sadly, again, there's no new numbers immediately because I'm recording this fresh off the bat, but again, I'll be linking the sheet in the description, and there will be new numbers later as well. But honestly, I'm hopeful with this because the battery being increased, and now she has that MP gain. I'm sure she can now at least do 50% CE looping. That should at least be possible. Not sure if she can do Black Grail looping yet, like Brito can with triple Scotty. But that remains to be seen. If she can, I feel like she could do a better job at farming than Brit can, but it depends if this is enough or not. But hey, this skill now looks way better. Now on a 5-turn cooldown, you suddenly have a very good skill. Like, for farming, it's already good, right? But for DPSing, hey, that's a lot of effects for, like, you know, 3-turn effects that are in a good uptime, so I'm actually happy with this buff. Now, I do think they should definitely buff her more. I don't think this is enough to get her out of the slump for both farming and DPSing, but, you know, I think it's a great start. Because remember, this is her first buff in, like, I don't know, 5 years. I forgot when she was released, but yeah, it's been way overdue. So on my Lancer tier list, I had placed her on a C, which, you know, maybe even lower than that should have been appropriate. Because she was arguably the worst SSR in the game. Before this buff, and she's still probably in the low ranks of all SSRs in the game, even among Lancers, but you know what, I can probably at least see a C+, maybe even a B, because I think now she should be able to improve her farming comp at least a little bit. For DPSing, yeah, it's gonna help too with the power mod and everything, but I still don't think, maybe I'm not gonna jump the gun too much yet. Let's just place her on B for that, or C+, and just chill. Again, I'll probably do the tier list again next year, so when the numbers are out and there's been a lot of, like, testing involved, then we can give her a proper ranking better. But for now, I'm just gonna slightly ever bump her up there. Again, maybe Savage, maybe needs to be more Savage, depends on the POV, but hey, it's a start. She's looking better, and again, much deserved buff. Now, the second buff is a bit more complicated. They're really trying for some wacky things. It actually took me a while to read through this to even understand how it works, and now I think I hopefully know how it works. Again, apologies for the Salter thing yesterday. Had to make a second video for it, but yeah, let's talk about William Tell's buffs. So let's just immediately jump into it. So it's his second skill. Now what did it used to do? On a 6-turn cooldown, you get 30% arts up for 3 turns for himself, and also debuff immune for 3 turns. Honestly, for a 3-star, this wasn't a terrible skill. This was honestly pretty okay. I never really had problems with this skill. But now, we are looking at a very interesting skill. So first of all, if anything, this is the big thing. The cooldown is now down to 5 turns at max rank, meaning that he actually has a good uptime on that 30% arts up now, and also being debuff immune most of the time as well now, which is great. So the cooldown reduction really, in my opinion, is the one big thing here. Now then it gets really tricky. So, first of all, we have 2 new AoE debuff thingies for all enemies. So, the first check happens, does an enemy have an evade? If an enemy has an evade when you use the skill, again this checks all enemies, the ones with evade get a new trait added to them, which is called marking, I believe. Now what marking does is that it's treated as a debuff, and it basically acts as if the enemy still had evade, which, if you don't know how William Tell's MP works, let me give you a reminder. His MP power mod is against enemies that have evade, and obviously he also gets sure hit on the MP before damage. Now, it's a big power mod. The overcharge scales from 200% to 250%, which is way higher than usual. So obviously, if the target has an evade, his MP hits really hard. If they don't have an evade, it's not that hard hitting, honestly. You can do way better with other, like 3-star archers or lower. But with the evade up, he will do crazy damage. So back to this now. So again, that's the first check. If an enemy has already evade, which means, again, he already gets, you know, good damage against them, but the marking thing for the evade targets, it's added for 3 turns. So now it's easier to keep getting more damage out of your MP, because, you know, usually when an enemy has an evade, it's either like hit base for like 3 hits, which is most likely removed in 1 turn, or it's like a 1-turn evade. So, you know, you really gotta hope you have your MP up by then. And usually enemies that have evade, it's like a trigger. They use it when they get low HP, for instance. So with this, if they have an evade, you get basically extension for your MP power mod. But that's not all. That was only the first check, remember. There's a second check now. So the second check is, it's checking for the actual marking thing added from the first check. So again, first check, evade. If they have it, great. Marking, 3 turns, boom, they're done. But then, the second thing is, if they don't have an evade, and if they don't have marking on them, it adds another new debuff called Evade Trap. Now what this means is that at the end of every enemy turn, it checks if the enemy suddenly has an evade, it will now apply the marking 3 buff again for 3 turns, right there. Which can only it's a one-time 5 turns thingy. So if there's no evades or markings going on, you get this for 1 time, 5 turns. So if in the next 5 turns the enemy suddenly gets an evade, at the end of their turn, and again before your turn begins, they will be marked by getting the 3-turn marked debuff. So again, it's easier for him to get more damage. I believe that's how it works. Again, it's a bit confusing, I know, and I assume a lot of people will be very confused about this as well. Also, I should mention, neither the marking nor the evade trap, they cannot proc from an unremovable evade, which I think is a real shame. It's like his MP, I believe, doesn't work like that. It's a real shame, because it has to be an evade that's removable, like a normal standard evade from like a skill or something. So for instance, if a boss starts with like if they get like an evade that's unremovable from like a bar break trigger happening, which is guaranteed to happen, neither his MP does more damage, nor do these markings or the evade trap work, sadly. So it still has to be removable evades. So at first I thought, you know, maybe this would be a way for him to always guarantee his power mod like Robin does with his poison, but sadly not the case. The enemy still has to get an evade. It just means that now he has an easier uptime to get more damage out of his MP, basically. But in my opinion, the big thing about this buff is the cooldown reduction, for him having way better uptime on the full-on debuff immune, and the sizable arts buff for himself for 3 turns each. So again, hopefully it wasn't too confusing. Both the trap and the marking are treated as debuffs, as I said. So yeah, you still need the enemy to evade. Again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I took some time. I really tried to read and understand, and I think that's how it works. Now on my tier list, I had him on a B+. With this, I think I can slot him in A, honestly. Well, again, mostly because of the cooldown reduction. He's a solid 3-star archer. Arguably, he should maybe even be A+ with Robin and Uriel, but for now, I'm just gonna I think I'm gonna leave an A in A tier. He's good. Again, if you've never tried him, try with Castoria, etc. He can actually pump out some good numbers, and his refund is also good. But there you go. Now maybe a bit more consistent with his power mod, but most importantly, better uptime for some really nice buffs. So there you go. That's gonna do it for today's buffs. Not as seemingly as crazy as yesterday, because the Salter one might just be the craziest buff. Not just from this batch, but one of the craziest buffs of all time, especially for farmers. But hey, I'm happy for Bradamante. She's getting more attention finally. I don't think this will solve the big issues. It will hopefully improve her farming though, for both damage and the comps available. But I think she will still definitely need more love after this. And as for William Tell, the cooldown reduction is nice, and then, hey, maybe a bit more, you know, damage turns with your MP is also nice, I suppose. Now, as for tomorrow's buffs, for day 3, we're getting a 5-star Berserker buff and a 2-star Caster buff. Now, for the 2-star Caster, I don't think it's going to be anyone else besides Shakespeare. That should be an obvious given one. I'll be very shocked if it's anyone besides Shakespeare, because Chenggang and Hans are already very, very good and strong in what they do. I don't think they need a buff. In fact, I think Shakespeare needs a buff really badly. Hardly anyone ever uses anymore. He used to be like a bit meta in like year 1 and 2 maybe for a bit of a bonus thingy, but nowadays, let's be real, no one uses Shakespeare anymore, so hopefully they find something cool for him as well. Now, as for my prediction for the 5-star Berserker, it's a bit more of a tough one. They could always add like the 30% battery to Raiko to immediately make her top tier if they want to. Again, she's, you know, that short of being like crazy good as a Buster farmer. But then there's also other ones that could maybe use a buff even more. Like, I think Nightingale is still like in a very awkward spot. She doesn't really have great uses. Another good recipient would be Shan Yu. He still could, much like Bradamante, in my opinion, he's still one of the weakest SSRs in the game. So I'm kind of hoping for either Nightingale or Shan Yu tomorrow. Anyone else would be kind of, you know, maybe not needed, but would be cool, I guess. Like Raiko fans, I'm sure, want to see that battery. But there you go. I'll leave my predictions like that for tomorrow. So if you enjoyed this buff breakdown for day 2, do me a solid and press the thumbs up button on this video. I hope I got everything correct this time. Again, feel free to let me know in the comments if I messed up anything. But hey, honestly, deserved buffs, again, I would say. Even if maybe not as groundbreaking as yesterday. Do subscribe not to miss out on the buff breakdowns coming daily. Tomorrow we'll cover the 5-star Berserker and 2-star Caster. And I hope to see you in the next video as well. Take care. It'll be so...